In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I got my PhD in microbiology and immunology as an international student and without student loan debt. If you're new here, you're welcome. My name is Dr. Nontra, and this channel is dedicated to giving you personal development tips, grad school life tips, as well as how to succeed in biomedicine as a woman. So if all of that sounds exciting to you, then go ahead, hit that subscribe button to join the community. All right, so the story really starts with me arriving in the United States back in 2003. Yes, I came to the US in 2003 as an international student. You can check this video here for that story. And when I came initially, my goal was to go to medical school. Actually, I signed up as a bio major at my college, and the goal was to go to med school. So I actually signed up in a pre-med major, which meant I took specific courses that would put me on the path to medical school. But whilst I did my research, whilst I was in undergrad, and realized that in order for me to go to med school, I had to borrow a large sum of money in order to go. And in order to do that, I would need a co-signer who was a US citizen or a permanent resident to co-sign that loan for me. And I didn't have anybody to do that for me. Later on, somebody did volunteer, but at that point, I didn't want to do it anymore. But because of that, right after I graduated from college, I decided to actually take up an accelerated nursing program. So I went through with the program because I did realize whilst I was still in the pre-med program that going to med school was, if I didn't go back to Ghana, where I'm originally from, or didn't opt to go to a cheaper medical school somewhere, that it was just going to be hard to do that. And in hindsight, right, I think maybe I could have, because I know friends who went to places like Ukraine and Poland to go to med school, but that's beside the point. That's water under the bridge now. Anyway, so once I was done, a friend of mine I was done with undergrad. I graduated my undergrad with a 3.83 GPA. Why do I think that's important? I think that's important because PhD programs are competitive, and so if you plan to apply to a PhD program, or it's in kind of like you're thinking about it, then you have to be thinking about your grades and making sure that those are good. So I actually did graduate my pre-med major with a 3.83 GPA, cumulative GPA at the end of it. So I got a summa cum laude, what it's in the United States, a summa cum laude. In Ghana and other countries that are like Commonwealth countries, usually it's called a first class or something like that. Anyway, so I finished undergrad, and about 6 months later I entered an accelerated nursing program. And one of my friends had shared that with me, that he had gone from the same major I was in to doing nursing. And within a year, he was done and making money. And, there was also the benefit at the time, of becoming a permanent resident of the United States, because at that time nurses were being recruited from all over the world to come to the US to work. So I thought that could be a reasonable path, because it was going to be a great career that paid well, and then potentially I could get my my green card. I did end up going to nursing school, and I absolutely loved it. At first I thought it would just be a great career to replace, my medical path. But I think that because it was still on that medical path I wanted to go on, patient care was exciting to me. Interacting, I think that my favorite part of the whole thing was really interacting with people on the job. So I really did enjoy that. Somewhere along the line, though, I knew that I did want to go back to grad school. I definitely wanted to go back and do something else. I didn't want to just stay as an RN for the rest of my life, even though I absolutely loved the career. So because I had already gotten a bachelor's degree in biology, I decided that following that up with another degree in biology, even though now I had nursing too, would be helpful, because I also love to teach, which is something I actually do now. I do teach at a community college. So I just thought, well, in order for me to do that, you could also teach as a nurse, but it's different. In order for me to do that and to achieve my dream of having doctor in front of my name, because it sounds vain as I'm saying it, but in a certain sense of the word, there was a part of me that did revel in the fact that I'd have, doctor in front of my name. Now, my father is actually a PhD as well. He got his PhD in agriculture and worked in the cocoa industry in Ghana. So that's what he did, and so it was also kind of like following the footsteps of my dad, of becoming like the second doctor in the family. So anyway, I did end up applying, and when I was looking for grad schools, this is how I did it. I went online, and at that time there was a tool known as Yahoo Education, and there was another tool known as gradschools.com. And so I looked at both of them, and what I did was I would type in microbiology and immunology, or microbiology or infectious disease degrees, because I knew I was interested in infectious diseases. I wanted to work in tropical disease research at some point in my career. So microbiology and immunology just fit that particular goal, that particular end goal. Although if you want to get a PhD in, say, cell biology or molecular biology, that is also helpful. But for me, I really did think that going after a microbiology and immunology degree would be helpful to me in pursuing that. So I used those tools to search for programs, and then I would write those programs down, go to their website, and then look for the program I wanted to apply for, and would go through all their requirements. So this is really important. Like, it's important for you to know when the application cycles are. I can't remember because now it's over a decade, but I remember I started looking somewhere, I want to say somewhere in January. And this was for the fall. This was for the fall of 2009. So I started looking somewhere in December of 2008, and then the beginning of 2009. Even at that point, it was a little late. There were a lot of schools that had already closed their application processes. So what I ended up doing was I just looked for those programs where the application process was still open. I looked for microbiology degrees specifically. I shortlisted the ones that were still open, and then I would fill out the application and then order the transcripts to go with that. And so a lot of the time when you are applying to these programs, I remember I mostly applied online, and then you would have to order your transcripts from whichever school you went to. If that school is overseas, then just make sure that you have that. If you went to a school that was non-English speaking, make sure that degree, that particular transcript will need to be translated, which means you'll need extra time. So make sure, my point here is make sure to give yourself time. I didn't give myself a whole lot of time and still got in. But I think it's really, really important for you to make the time for it, like at least a year in advance. Because what happens is that a lot of these schools start interviewing potential PhD students about 6 months before the actual year starts, before the year begins, 6 months to a year. So you want to give yourself that time so you can make a specific application cycle and then get in the year that you want to get in. I just started putting the applications in, ordering transcripts. There were application fees. I paid those, and then I think somewhere in April of 2009, May of 2009, when I applied to Temple University, because I went to Temple University's School of Medicine's PhD program. And when I applied, they had said you would hear back somewhere in March. Remember, I said I started looking in December, January, and then I would immediately apply to these programs. And so they said somewhere in March or the end of March of that year, we would hear back. And I hadn't heard anything back. So I actually picked up the phone and called. I don't know what made me do that, but I actually picked up the phone and called the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at Temple University. And when I did, I got the secretary of the department, and she was the one that told me, well, we've already picked the students we want to pick, and I was like, no. So I said, thank you very much. I put on the phone, said a prayer. And then, interestingly, I think this was on a Friday or Thursday. The following week on Monday, I did get a call, and they said, we want to interview you over the phone. So they looked at my application materials and they thought that I was a good fit for the program because I had a biology degree. I got a really good GPA there. I went to nursing school. I finished with, I think, a 3.2 GPA. Nursing school is hard. All right. Like, nursing school is really hard. So never think nurses have to go through a lot to get those degrees. Anyway, so I had really good credentials. And so they wanted to interview me over the phone. I'm like, oh, okay. So I did schedule that and got on the phone with one of the admissions, one of the faculty that was on the admissions committee. She interviewed me over the phone, and immediately she just said, we really like your application. I just wanted to get on the phone and talk with you, and we would like to offer you a place in the program. And I was like, what? So herein lies one of the lessons of life, that don't just give up so easily. Just because I hadn't heard back didn't mean I shouldn't call. I know a lot of other programs say don't call, don't get in touch with anybody, but maybe an email or a phone call to a department, and you talking to them may change things. It definitely changed things for me, and so I don't know, like, you have to go after what you want. Anyway, so I did get in the program, and at the time I started the program in August of 2009. So I was offered a place somewhere in April or May of 2009, and then I entered the program in August of 2009, which is fall of 2009. So now let me talk about the no student loan part, okay? Because I'm sure a lot of you clicked on this video to watch that. So yes, there were no student loans. I didn't have to take out money to get a PhD program. That's not the case with medical school. That's not the case with dentistry. That's not the case with pharmacy. PhDs, some PhDs, not all of them, but a lot of time PhDs in the biomedical sciences will have training grants that they got from the NIH or the National Institutes of Health of the United States. And so they have that money available to give to students who come in as PhD students to do research, because when you become a PhD student, it's not mock work. You're actually doing research that goes on real papers that can have real impact. So it's almost like you're working. When I started in fall of 2009, I was getting paid $23,000 a year, which is definitely a pay cut from the salary of a nurse. But I was grateful to be making income, to be honest, because I knew that the end goal would be great. So $23,000 stipend per year. And it was good for me at the time because it was just me, and I lived in a really cheap place in Philadelphia, which is where Temple University is located. So it ended up working out really, really well. So for that first year, I was paid off of the NIH training grant that the department had. Now, in the consequent years, the advisor that finally accepted me into their lab actually wrote grants. So we did the research. Like I said, once you become a PhD student, it's not mock research. You can't just mess up experiments. Things are super expensive in research, and you're doing real research. Okay, so based on some preliminary data that I generated that ended up being great data, ended up being a really great project, my advisor was able to write some grants to some organizations. One of them was, I think, American Heart Association. We also got money from, there was some money from NIH, I think. There was money from, some money from Janssen. The NIH one I may be getting wrong, but anyway, I do remember that she was a phenomenal advisor, by the way. Thank you, Chala, if you ever watch this. She was a phenomenal advisor, and she so she took the research I had done, used it to write grants. We ended up getting money, and for the rest of the time I was there. I graduated in 2015. The money from those grants were what paid my stipend, and I'm so grateful for that, because during my program we did have one student whose advisor lost funding, and it became difficult for them to continue because they didn't have, I think they didn't have enough research to write novel grants that would get them the money they needed, so it ended up being really difficult for that student. But that never happened to me. So grateful, because the research I was doing was good, and it allowed my advisor to write grants that got us money. That's another lesson, is once you enter into a lab, make sure that the research you're doing is going to be something that you can publish, first of all, and also it's going to be something that can contribute towards a grant, because when that happens, then you can get paid off that grant, and then you don't have to necessarily, you'll be earning money as a student, and you don't necessarily have to pay a lot of, actually I didn't pay tuition, I paid fees, because all the a lot of the universities in the US have like student activity fees and some like small other fees that are not like huge amounts. And so it'll be like, for me, I remember I used to be like $200 to $300 a semester, and I was making money, so I was able to pay those off myself, so it ended up being that I didn't have to take out student loans. I was getting paid because I was getting a PhD, and in the end I came out without any debt, and I got the doctor in front of my name. So I do think that getting a PhD is a great path to really rewarding career paths, because once you get a PhD, there's so many paths you could go on. And let me know in the comments below if you want me to make a video on that. It's important as a PhD student to publish. Okay, it is really important, because this is what's going to make you competitive when you go out there to apply for jobs after your PhD, especially research-oriented jobs or jobs in academia, even sometimes industry. It is very helpful if you have written and published papers. So I think that if you plan on getting into a PhD program, that from the get-go, you have that intention, and you work your experiments and design your time in such a way that at least you graduate with one paper where you are the first author, okay, where you're the principal author of that paper. Now, there are labs that will put your name on other papers so that you're something called a middle author, but you want to have research that you did on a paper. That's really important. And I know that sometimes there's pushback from certain labs that doesn't allow you students to publish their papers. I don't know why that is, but it's kind of like some of the politics that ends up happening in the biomedical sciences. But it is possible for you to publish your papers. I graduated my PhD with 2 first author papers, and then I think 3 papers where I was like a contributing author. I wasn't the principal author, but I was a contributing author. So I finished, and I already had like 4 or 5 papers. And when I was applying, it made me super competitive. So again, make sure you publish. So that's how I was able to, go to grad school in the US without student loan debt. As an international student. And as far as the international student thing goes, if you have an F1 visa, you're good. Okay, if you have an F1 visa, you're absolutely good to go. So that's fine. You can go ahead and apply to do that, and then get an F1 visa to come to the US to study as a PhD student. But I think it's a great path. I think that if you want to go on it, you should, because it can be rewarding. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about anything I said, anything wasn't clear. Let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer it.